So today we are talking about the cell theory and the cell parts. So first off, we're going to start with cell parts. As you can see, this is a cell. The first part of the cell that we are going to be talking about is the nucleus. So here is the nucleus, close up. And the nucleus is basically like the brain to the cell. It contains all the chromosomes, which are your DNA, and the nuclear membrane protects the nucleus from getting damaged or letting anything enter it. Now that we're finished talking about the nucleus, we're moving on to the nuclear membrane. And the nuclear membrane, and as I said before, the nuclear membrane protects the nucleus. It has two layers and holds all the genetic material. And as you can see in the right picture, it also has these nucleus pores. And here's the nucleus. And the nucleus creates ribosomes, and it's the dark stained spots in the nucleus. So you can see a pretty good image of it in the right corner. Now that we're finished talking about the nucleus, we're going to move on to all the rest of the organelles in the cell. So we're going to start off with endoplasmic reticulum. And the endoplasmic reticulum has two membranes and is the transportation through the membranes. There's also two types of endoplasmic reticulum. And so the first one would be the smooth, which synthesizes the lipids, and the next would be the rough, which synthesizes the proteins, but that's the actual function of the ribosomes that are on the rough endoplasmic reticulum. And so next we have ribosomes. And the ribosomes synthesize the proteins, which the endoplasmic reticulum rough does. And it can be attached outside of the endoplasmic reticulum. So what I'm trying to say is that it can also float around anywhere through the cytoplasm. Now we have the Golgi apparatus. And our Golgi apparatus stores molecules to modify them into vesicles, which get transported, and they also fold the stacks of membrane. So just kind of think of it as folded stacks of towels, and how it has those kind of not wrinkles but spaces in between. Now we are talking about microtubules. And so the microtubules hold organelles in their rightful place, so they don't move. And they keep the other organelles rigid, and they help move the cell from place to place. Next we have mitochondria. And mitochondria provides power to the cell, has folded stacks of membrane like the Golgi apparatus. So they kind of also look like a stack. The membranes also kind of look like a stack of towels piled on each other. And now we have the centrioles. And the centrioles sort through chromosomes, and they're shaped like rods on a turbine. So in the right picture you can see the rods distributed equally on the blades of a turbine. Or that's how I imagine it. Now we have the vacuoles. And the vacuoles hold the water, food, and nutrients within the cell. And they kind of just float everywhere around the cytoplasm. Which brings us to cytoplasm. And cytoplasm is transparent in the cell. We can't see it. It flows like a liquid to transfer nutrients to other organelles. So it's basically the flowing inside the cell. It keeps everything flowing, gives everything else nutrients. Next we have liposomes. And liposomes are the digestive enzymes. They digest old material that enter through the membrane. So, they kind of just digest all the material because you don't want anything that's old in you. And lastly, we have the cell membrane. And the cell membrane lets certain material enter the cell. It holds everything within the cell and contains proteins and form vesicles. And that is the end of the cell parts. Yay! Now we're moving on to the cell theory. And so you guys are probably asking, what is the cell theory? Well, it's a scientific theory which defines and describes cells and their functions. Now, what are the properties of the cell theory? Well, all organisms are composed of one or more cells. The cell is a basic unit of structure and organization in organism, and all cells come from pre-existing cells, so they just don't spontaneously come in through thin air. Now we have our first scientist, who was Robert Hooke, and he was the first to discover the cell. He discovered plant cells. He was an English scientist, had a large rivalry with Sir Isaac Newton because Robert Hooke proclaimed that he had came up with the physics or Newton's theory. He also described the cells of a quark as a prism or a monastery because there's different cells in each one. Now we have Anton van Leeuwenhoek. And Anton van Leeuwenhoek was the first to discover bacteria with a strange microscope. And in the right you can see the microscope, and it's kind of weird. He was colleagues with Hooke and constantly sent letters to his friend in England to give him observations about bacteria and different types that you can find. With Massey Sheldon, he was one of the co-founders of the cell theory. He looked at so many plants and leaves that he finally concluded that every plant has cells. Now we also have Theodor Schwann, and Theodor Schwann was the other co-founder of the cell theory. He looked at animal cells and concluded that all animals have cells. He also had a nerve cell named after him. Now we have Rudolf Virchow, and Rudolf Virchow was the last co-founder of the cell theory. He concluded that cells came from pre-existing cells, but unfortunately he stole this information from Robert Remarque, and so they had a debate of who actually came up with the last point of the cell theory. And that is the end of the cell theory and my presentation. I hope you learned something from it.